Okay, so I think Karina's going to start with her first question, and then we're just going to ask you.
Yeah, we're just going to bounce back and forth. So my first question for you, in your opinion, what do you find the most interesting about music?
Well, I would like to know first, are you undergraduates or graduate students?
Oh, sorry.
What's the class? What's the project about, so that I know how to tailor my answer? This would be a bit helpful.
Okay, so yeah, so I am an undergraduate. My major is criminal justice. For this class, it's music 380, I believe. And we're just learning about music and history, or women in music. Well, yeah, so women in music and the history of it, the different type of genres, and the kind of the struggles women face during this time, and why there isn't a lot of historical musicians that are women or their pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty much this project is just about, finding someone that could fit that role, whether they're in the music industry, like whatever instrument, whether they're composers, stuff like that. And we just kind of have to interview someone to, attach what we're learning and what we could learn. Yeah.
Okay. And you are also an undergraduate student?
Yes. But I'm a psych major.
And so you're not music majors?
No.
This is a general requirement class.
Okay. Oh, that's even better. Well, first I wish to say that there are many historical people in music who were women, and many of them were greatly successful in their time. But in time they faded because, and here's the catch, you have to do advertisement, lots of self-promotion. And women kind of don't do this as well as guys do. And I've noticed that today, luckily, women are starting to notice. You have to appear in encyclopedias, well, nowadays it's more on websites, in directories. And I notice on my website, many of the visits come from visitors being forwarded from Wikipedia or from 20th century's composers. How do you say it in English? Directory. So it's important to appear in directories and in publications, which earlier women did less. But luckily, today's generation is trying to rediscover them.
Yeah, definitely.
So your question was, what do I find most interesting about music?
Yes.
Well, you can tailor it the way you want. It's the creative aspect. When I compose, I'm goddess, meaning I decide who plays what, when, and how. And I'm also a performer, so I can say that. And this is the creative aspect. There is also the business aspect. It's an industry where everyone can find their niche if they like it and if they want to. For me, it's the creative aspect. I started being better at the business aspect later, sadly.
Okay.
I was all nice music. Let me compose a piece. But then you compose the piece, but then someone needs to play it. So when I was younger, more idealistic, I wrote a lot of pieces, many very ambitious, and some of them even good, and they remained unplayed. So when I started focusing more on getting the name out, getting the music out, then things started to work out more for me.
Okay. So the next question that I have is, how would you describe the music that you compose, like the genre, or how would you explain it to someone?
Well, if I have to explain it to a colleague, to a professional musician, it would be a slow, currently, okay, I'm speaking the last 3 or 4 years, slower harmonic development with active foreground, in layman's terms, it would be romantic. I know when you listen to it, you won't think of romantic period of music, but it's becoming more and more personal, romantic, and passionate. Maybe because as a performer, I play many funerals, so you know it kind of gets to you after a certain point. Yeah, more to you than weddings. Yeah, funerals get to you.
My next question is, was it someone that got you into music, or was it just something you picked up yourself?
Well, one of my first... Pardon? You blocked.
Go ahead.
So, Karina, you blocked a bit. Was there someone who got me into music?
Yeah, or was it something you picked up yourself?
So, one of my first earliest memories is I was a tiny baby on the bed, and my feet didn't even reach the end of the bed. But right before me, so like this, was the piano that is still at home in Bulgaria. I'm from Bulgaria. And my grandmother, she had my father very late, and my father had me very late. So she was very elderly. She lived to be over 100 even. And she was playing the piano. It was one of the first pianos in the country. It came by ship on the Danube, and then with a horse in a carriage down to Sofia, that at the time was just some small village. I remember her playing a piece, and I was a tiny baby, and I didn't speak yet. I remember I didn't speak because she turned to me and smiled, and I wanted to say, oh, that was a nice piece, but I couldn't speak yet. And I remember it was such a big memory that when I was older and already playing the piano, when I opened the piece, when I saw the piece written on music, I recognized it. It was a Chopin Nocturne. But after I heard my grandmother, I said, okay, well, that's it. You know, I want to play the piano. I want to be a musician. So I told my parents. I started playing the piano. Even now on my personal Facebook profile, my eternal picture is me at age 1.5 on the piano with 2 hands like this. I was so cute. So that was me when I was little, and there was never anything else. I wanted to do piano. I went to music school starting at age 5, the Sofia Music School. Then when I was 6, I was playing this piano piece. Well, I can sing it to you. Tam pam tadam tam tadarara ti di 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 di, very famous. But anyway, I was convinced the second chord is wrong. And so I remember telling my parents when we were having lunch, and then my father said, well, why don't you write the good version? And suddenly there was a realization in my head, like, wow, I'd never even considered it. I said, yeah, well, he's right. I could write the good version. So then I wrote my first piece, which has only 2 chords, the first chord and the correct chord. So it's a couple of minute long piece, and that's how I started composing. I wanted lessons. I asked my parents to get me lessons. So my father called his old classmate, who's actually older than him. So when I was his student, he was in his 80s already, I believe. So I started composition lessons. Then when he passed away, I had another teacher. And then gradually, you know, composition took over as the primary activity. And with time, so I played piano very early. I did a lot of concerts. So the performing kind of burned out on piano until I discovered organ, which doesn't really exist in Bulgaria because the religion is not the same. But I saw it in Boston, and I fell in love. I don't know whether you guys know what an organ is. It has multiple keyboards. Yeah. It has a full pedal board. And all the megalomaniac aspect of my personality just felt right at home. And I'm like, oh, yes, I can play fast and loud and show off as much as I want. So I switched to organ, and it's lots of fun because there's no performing pressure of the type that I don't like. So I play a lot. I play multiple services a week. I work with different singers. I enjoy this. I compose for organ. And when I'm not doing that, I'm at home writing music. So until now, it works out just the way I imagined it when I was a kid.
That's awesome. Having your dreams come true. One question that I had is, have you ever felt that like being a woman in music, you've like faced a harder time than like a male counterpart?
Not when I was in Bulgaria. When I was in Bulgaria, I was the only student at the academy. So I finished school early. I quit in 7th grade. I did the final state exams and I went to university. I entered when I was 15, studied when I was 16. And then there were 6 full-time teachers who were composers, who were teaching composition and other stuff. And I was the only student. They were so happy to have me. They were like, oh, you wonderful girl, the future of Bulgarian music, you know? And there was nobody. There was no guy, there was no girl. So I had no idea. And Bulgarian music, because see, the classical music, the so-called Western tradition, only came to Bulgaria in the late 19th century when Polish and Czech musicians, I think it was Polish or Czech musicians, they came to establish the bands. So there were some first orchestras around the time of the liberation, because we were enslaved in the Ottoman Empire for a very long time. So liberation, there were orchestra, mixed folklore, Western instruments. So then gradually things started getting going. But there were women from the very beginning. I mean, it was already, end of the 19th century, 20th century. There were actually the first conductor, professional conductor to conduct Beethoven's Ninth Symphony was a Bulgarian, and she was a woman. So it didn't really occur to me that things are different otherwise, but I gradually realized, for example, first to clarify, in composition, we are always very few. So the lack of other women or the lack of other people really doesn't strike as unusual. I only found out as I was submitting my thesis to McGill that I was the first woman to ever graduate with a doctorate from McGill University. I passed my whole doctorate not realizing this. So I was only the first woman and only the 13th person. Before then, in the Eastman School of Music, we were two people in my class, and we were both women. So I have to say, it's only in the last couple of years when I see the overall general trends that I notice that it's like this a lot. It's true, but I somehow was blissfully unaware for the longest time.
Wow, that's amazing, and congratulations on being the first woman to graduate.
From McGill, yes, thank you very much. Didn't bring me any money though. now that I work in music, the one thing I'm thinking is how much cash will go into my pocket from this gig. So they didn't give me a special price, sadly, like a $10,000 startup as a woman grant. No.
Now that you know all that and experienced that, is there something you would change in the industry?
Yeah, the music schools really don't focus enough on doing simple practical things. How to write an email asking for a collaboration or looking for a performer, how to write a grant. Like in Canada, we are dependent on grants. Canada Council for the Art, Quebec Council for the Art. I never studied this in school. It was a hit and miss for years after I graduated to have, to kind of get better at this. And I'm still not very good. I mean, my biggest grants came when someone else was writing the grant asking to pay me. Like this is how I get grants. Like I basically get grants because other more experienced people, better grant writing people get them. My music doesn't change, but still, it's a skill that I think people should know, and a lot of self-promotion, especially for women. That I'm so lucky because my father told me when I was little, he said, modesty never made anyone's career. So, just forget it. Yeah. So modesty, yeah, the whole like being modest, and I see this in Canadians too. I don't know whether have you ever thought of the greatest, best, well-known Canadian composer? No, I'm sure you haven't. Well, that's because if you ask a Canadian, so are you a good composer? That's the answer. Well, I don't know. It's up to others to say, really. But no, I wouldn't. I shouldn't tout my own horn. You should ask the other performers. No! If you're good, say, yes, I'm good. Please hire me. I write great pieces. But Canadians don't do this really. And I notice on the international stage, like really Canadian music doesn't exist. I didn't know it existed until I was in my master's in the States. I had never heard a Canadian piece, ever. I was doing a master's degree. So that tells you how bad the situation is. So yeah, definitely practical issues, grant writing, social media management. Oh, that's good. Sometimes I read posts on Facebook and I'm like, oh, just reading this, I don't want to play the piece by the guy. Just no. So yeah.
So kind of like a little follow-up, you mentioned it a little bit in this last question, but who is like the most, like, let me read who is a woman in music that inspires you, whether it be in history or now?
Well, it's hard to pinpoint one woman. Maybe there was Ethel Smith. She was an American composer. I mean, really, she was also very successful in her lifetime, very successful. And then with time, she gradually faded away, only to be rediscovered sooner. There is also the Boulanger sisters. Nadia is the older one, a very famous, like the most famous music teacher of all time. She was also a composer, but it's actually her younger sister, Lily, who kind of showed what French music could be. Like, she died tragically young from tuberculosis, as far as I remember. Mm-hmm. But she was a composer who would have totally changed the world of French music. There is a woman who is still alive. She's called Sofia Gubaidulina. She made it in the Soviet Union, and she's so amazing that she became a world-known name even behind the Iron Curtain. And she's still alive, elderly, of course, but I mean, her music speaks so universally that people, regardless of culture, political affiliation, or in our days, a lot of xenophobia, recognize her as one of the best Eastern composers, period. Man or woman, doesn't matter. So yeah, those are a couple of names that I highly recommend.
Yeah, I will look into them after the interview.
Yes. My next question is, do you believe there's specific essential qualities that would make you a good composer?
I don't know. I know. I mean, it's very not politically correct to speak of talent these days.
Yeah.
So I'll go with the politically incorrect version. You have to have the talent. Without the talent, all the hard work will bring lots of music, and it will mostly be mediocre. I've met people like these. They're charming, so hardworking, write so many notes, and it's so sad that you cannot find it in yourself to tell them, just drop it. You're not any good, but you can't, because artistic desires and all that stuff. But yeah, qualities, you need talent first.
Okay.
talent first and everything else later. Everything else you can get, and you can get even alone today with internet. You can get. I mean, I just taught a masterclass in Haiti, so like the world is so small. So, but without talent, really, it doesn't work.
Yeah. So kind of, I think this is my last question. It's kind of a follow-up from the question Karina just asked, is what advice would you give to someone who is now just starting to play music or wants to go into the music industry, or to be a composer or performer?
Well, for me, those are two different questions. For people who are starting, perseverance is the most important part. You enjoy it more the more you do it. So you enjoy it more the more you do it, and the harder you practice. Mm-hmm. So it will be 5 hours of physical work, and only then you will get to really hear the piece when you play it well enough to play it. So music, that's why music lessons are so important, because they teach perseverance, patience, and open-mindedness, and team building skills when you get to play with other people. They teach this just as much as music, which is why, as we know, so many people who study music excel in so many different fields, because the type of work ethic that they learn through music is very easily transferred to any other domain. So I believe learning music in schools should be very much encouraged, because it also teaches so many other skills. Now, with respect to someone going into music, the advice would be, think about how much are you willing to sacrifice, because this is not a recommendable life for people who it's not for the faint of heart. So you have to be willing to, like the joke goes, a jazz player is the person who loads $5,000 gear into $500 car and drives 50 kilometers for a $58 gig. It's kind of the reality. So long days, unknown hours. Like, I didn't know yesterday that today I would be playing 2 funerals. Like, I thought I would be home talking to you guys and cooking, but no. Right after we finish, I go back in the car and go back for the second funeral. So unknown hours, little money, money from many different streams of income. So this is something that not everyone can manage. Like you really, at any point, you have 3 or 4 clients at the same time that you have to follow up with, you have to write. So this is, and I don't even know how people with children do it. Like, holy shit. I have no idea how they do it. I have no kids. Like, I said yes to 2 funerals yesterday, but if I had a kid, well, I have to find a babysitter, or I have to bring the kid with me. Actually, I have a very good friend. She's mother of 3 kids. She's an organist, so she brings like 2 kids to daycare. She takes the 3rd with her. You know, that's kind of superwoman. But this is the kind of yeah. And also, is it worth it? Like, do you think you are that good to sacrifice that much? Mm-hmm. So this is a question that everyone has to honestly answer. Like, are you really that good? And it's a tough question to answer, because as we were told in undergraduate, like one of my teachers told you, yeah, sure, you're wonderful, but do you think you're that good to sacrifice just about everything? So everyone has to answer this question for themselves.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask you, is it worth it for you? And
you totally.
Answered that question.
Totally. Because every year I get better. You know when someone was telling them, when your things, your music and your life, everything gets better when you're 30. Oh, that's so right. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I woke up 30 and it was like, yeah, things get better. And then I was 35 and I'm like, whoa, my music is so much better. I hope nobody plays the stuff when I wrote when I was 25. And now I look at the stuff when I wrote when I was 30, saying, I'm so much better now. Like every time, every new piece, it's like, okay, this is the best piece, and all the rest are not so good. Now, every single composer thinks that, but of course, they all have something in them, you know. But the feeling is they're just the same.
That's great to hear that you love what you do and that
Oh
you.
yeah, and I'll be 40 soon. I hope that the music will really like get super good when I'm 40. Because you're a young composer until you're 40. Composing competitions, everything is until you're 40. Then nobody wants to hear your music anymore. You have to die, and then you're suddenly famous. So this year in the Canadian Music Center, that's my publisher. So anyway, I read the newsletter itself. So there were two performances of a person called Cole Grass. It's a composer I know. He's written a wind band music and stuff. So I said, wow, two performances, you know, good for him. And I've met him. And then we had our annual meeting Saturday. He died. I didn't even know. But that's why he has two performances. It's not like everyone likes orchestra music now. He died. And then my friend said, okay, you know what? If needed, I'll pay for a performance. But please, just don't die yet. So yeah, he died. It's like so horribly stereotypical. As soon as you die, suddenly people program your music because now you're dead, so they can get it for $10 from the publisher instead of paying you a real wage. That's part of the problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think this is my final question as well. Do you feel there is a hidden message in your music?
Oh, sometimes there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes there is, and sometimes I review it in a cryptic program note. There is a piece I have which has a date as the program note. Now the piece is called "One Day God Will Return." It's an old piece now, and the date is the date a contentious political activity happened in my end of the world. And many people will miss it. Now, obviously, the title means exactly the opposite of what I say, but you have to know what the program note means. And sometimes the hidden message remains hidden. I have no desire to share it. And sometimes I use codes that are very well known among musicians. So as you know, notes have names. And from these names, you can make words. You may know Shostakovich. He's a Russian composer. Like he hid his name in his quartets. And I have written a piece like this. It's called the Elgea Quartet. Now, Elgea is the company that paid for the quartet. And I transformed the name into musical notes. So if people know, then, or they have perfect pitch, like, or they see the score, they'll guess that that's the message. It's written there. So this is a well-known code that musicians use from messages. And you may have heard of certain mysteries that have not yet been solved. There is a cycle called the Enigma Variations by Elgar. So he told everyone there is a hidden theme. The theme that you hear is not the theme, but it's hidden, and you have to deduce which one it is. And so many years have passed since, and there are many, many theories, some of them quite convincing, but nobody has been able to prove conclusively what the theme is. So sometimes it pays off to have a hidden message, because you have countless articles written about you, and it becomes your best known piece. So never know.
I actually had one more question for
Sure.
the last question I asked you. Do you have any pieces that have been published or that you're most proud of?
Yes, I'm published through the Canadian Music Center. They are my publisher. Before then, I got some pieces published in Bulgaria. They may still be. When I immigrated, I lost track of my earlier works. But they are published, and with respect of the most proud, it goes back to what I said about the last piece is always the best, and it really represents me best. But you never know what will speak to people. I have some pieces that my most well-performed piece is a piece I wrote in one day, in a way as a musical game, to have some kids play, you know, kids that don't read music yet. So, and suddenly it became my even an orchestra, 2 orchestras played it, and it was just written as a game. You never know what will speak to people, so it is. So I guess the piece that makes me the most proud is always the piece that I learned had an impact on people, made them happy, made them feel something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is that all your questions, Karina? Karina?
I think she blocked.
I think she's frozen.
Yeah, she's frozen. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time. Oh,
She's back.
oh, did you hear what I said? Was that all your questions?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We lost you for a second. Well, yeah, thank you so much again for your time. I wish you great success in your career, and thank you again for letting us interview you and getting to know more about you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Would you kindly send me a drive link to the recording? I'll download it on my end.
Yeah, of course. I would just figure that out first because it's my first time using Skype. So when I figure it out, I will email it to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's see. So I have to